I recently read a really interesting paper on how few individuals use fenbendazole medication to treat themselves with cancer, and I really wanted to share this with you. Lately, I've been particularly interested in how to fight cancer because, of course, we have all these unsubstantiated rumors that there are elevated cases of cancers. My channel audience is really interested in this topic, so I thought, I'm more dedicated to this information. And this particular paper, which was peer-reviewed and published, which is a really great accomplishment, is on cancer patients who were in a very dangerous state already, in really highly progressed cancers, and they use veterinary grade fenbendazole medication without knowledge of their doctor, so they self-treated themselves. And this medication is not approved, not even approved for use, for human use. It's only approved for veterinary use, for dogs basically. And I think this is fantastic that this was published, because the article calls for greater attention to this, and more specifically, and I think this is very wise that the authors of this paper mentioned this. They said, look, we cannot have patients self-medicating themselves with medications that we don't know how it's supposed to work for humans, and therefore the article calls for clinical trials using this medication, and it uses these cases, these successful cases, to bring attention to this situation. So I really wanted to share all of that information with you. Now, one of the leading authors of this paper was Dr. William Makis. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm not sure if I pronounce his last name properly. Now, how do I know about this guy? He's a bit of a bad boy in the world of oncology. So what do I mean by that? Every generation, there's some doctor that is treating cancer patients in unconventional manner, and usually these guys get in trouble for using treatment methods that are unapproved. And this guy is using ivermectin and fenbendazole at least that's my awareness, as a primary way of treating or helping cancer patients. I think he provides advice. I really don't know the situation, to be honest. However, I did start following him on X, formerly Twitter, and I can tell you that every few days he posts a new success story. So clearly this captures my attention, but being, of course, scientist, I'm like, well, I don't really pay attention to that. Well, I mean, I do pay attention to this. I am fascinated, but I always feel like, well, okay, but if this works so well, why don't you publish this? And voila, there he is publishing this. And this is the smart way to move forward. We need to publish cases like this. And I think this is a moral duty of treating doctors, that if you have your patients self-medicating themselves with unapproved methods, and they tell you, hey, cancers have improved, and in this particular 3 cases, these were amazing success stories, then I think it's a moral duty of doctors to publish this information. And the reason why is because it's only via this chain reaction that we are going to get to clinical trials, which is exactly what this article calls for, which I thought was very, very smart by these authors. They didn't just say, hey, look, yay, this really works. They saying it correctly. We don't know how this works. We don't know if this was fenbendazole or not. We think that potentially people self-medicating can be dangerous. And in order to protect patients, we need high-level, high-quality clinical trials, so that we know whether it works properly indeed, and if it works, what are the appropriate amounts that should be used. And I will tell you everything in terms of what was described in these cases. But the reason why I was interested in this Dr. William Makis, who's from Edmonton, by the way, the city where I live, right? Hence, there's that other connection, and of course, that all of that makes me pay attention, is because He was also one of the co-authors of a paper that I was really interested in. I covered in multiple videos, which I labeled as New Cancer Theory, and that in those video series I discussed those authors' concept that cancer is a metabolic disease. Now, that's not a theory. This is fairly well established by now, that cancers have altered metabolism. Word theory comes in is whether we can take advantage in terms of treating cancer patients. And the reason why I was so interested in that particular publication when I made these videos is because they only spoke of 3 drugs, and all other interventions were lifestyle interventions. And that's the concept that really spoke to me and why I was particularly interested in this. But in terms of the 3 drugs that were mentioned, they were Ivermectin, and I've made several videos on Ivermectin since, including I'm making these back-to-back videos on veterinary use of medications. So check out the previous video on ivermectin that I made, where I also talked about patients using veterinary grade ivermectin because they cannot get their hands on the medication and they want to self-medicate themselves. And the other ones were Fenbendazole, which is only approved for animals, and Mebendazole, I hope I got that right, which is approved for human use. It's very closely related to Fenbendazole. So that's why I was really interested in that article. So that's my background on this particular individual, but I haven't really, and that's all I know, all right? But clearly when this paper came out and I saw it, he marketed on his social media, I was really interested and I wanted to tell you about this. All right, so as I mentioned, these were all cancer cases that were already very advanced stages of cancer. All of these people use veterinary grade Fenbendazole, and that was self-medication. So let's go one by one each case. So case number 1 was an 83-year-old woman who had a stage 4 breast cancer that already metastasized to liver, lung, spine, bones. She was offered chemotherapy that she refused. She didn't want to undergo that treatment, and then she was relegated to basically hospice care. So as a consequence, she decided to self-medicate herself. She used 222 milligrams per kilogram body weight of Fenbendazole. And on top of that, she used vitamin D and some multivitamins as her treatment modality. All right, so, and she did have some radiation as well for some of the pain that she was suffering from. And in, I believe it was June 2022, her cancer was gone. It was completely gone. So she had complete remission, and she's been cancer-free ever since. So more than 3 years. So that's case number 1, the first success story. Case number 2 was, I believe this was something like maybe 75-year-old man who had a stage, age is not important, I'm probably gonna get those details messed up, stage 4 prostate cancer with extensive metastasis to bones. This individual was undergoing androgen deprivation therapy. I hope I got that name right. Basically, those are male hormones, and the reason why deprivation is because such as testosterone, and the reason why is because such hormones can help prostate cancer development. And on top of that, again, this individual decided to treat himself with Fenbendazole between 222 to 444 milligrams per kilogram body weight. And on top of that, I believe this individual was taking vitamin D with K2, magnesium supplements, melatonin, curcumin, and some other approaches as well. So you can see a myriad of self-medications. And again, in I believe this was January 2024, there was a remission, or basically the cancer stopped spreading. the cancer growth was diminished and metastasis stopped. And it's been 26 months since then that there was no further progression. So this is not a complete remission, unlike the first case, but obviously whatever was happening, it was halted. So that's great. And then last case number 3, was again an individual, a man in his 60s, maybe something like 64 years old. This person had an advanced stage 3 melanoma cancer, and this person was offered immunotherapy. It's a checkpoint inhibitor therapy, which was drug called, what is it? Nivolumab? I can't remember. I made a video on this. I should remember these things, but I never remember the names. But either way, this is the reason why this is interesting, because this is a medication that is an antibody, and this is an antibody against a protein called PD-1. So, and that, what does PD-1 stand for? Programmed cell death protein 1, I think. And the reason why this is interesting, because it's an IgG4 antibody. Now, I did a series of videos on IgG4 antibodies for cancer treatments, those immune checkpoint inhibitors. This is how we find out about turbocancers. So check out the turbocancer videos. It's the IgG4 antibodies that can become a problem when an individual has cancer. It can actually help cancer go into this very hyper-progressive state of growth, and that's called hyper-progressive disease. That's the medical term for turbocancers. So this person was supposed to undergo this treatment but had to wait for it. So check out those videos on turbocancers. Now, why do I mention this? Is because unfortunately we also know that all individuals, practically all individuals who have taken mRNA COVID-19 vaccines, they now produce these IgG4 antibodies against the spike protein. So that could be a problem for such individuals if they have cancer in the future. And there was also, I covered a video, and I made a series of videos on IgG4 antibodies. This is obviously a great topic of interest to me because it's a potential serious issue. And recently there was finally a peer-reviewed article showing that these specific vaccine-induced development of these IgG4 antibodies against spike protein are indeed problematic for cancer patients, in that they can increase their risk and decreases their chances of survival. And I covered that for pancreatic cancer, so check that video out as well. So this individual was supposed to take this medication, but had to wait. And while he was waiting, he decided to self-medicate himself with Fenbendazole as well. Same amounts as the last person. And on top of that, self-medicating with vitamins. So the vitamins is a common denominator between all of these 3 cases. And in February 2024, again, cancer was completely gone. So full remission. And this individual, it's been over 11 months since the disease disappeared. So look, what is the author call that we should be investigating this further? Now, clearly, all your oncologists will tell you, no, you're not supposed to do this. They will tell you this naturally because it's not an approved medication. So they have to say this, right? So oncologists, or like with the Ivermectin against COVID, FDA would tell you, hey, you're not a dog, you're not a cow. But these individuals clearly would say, sure, but hey, we're not dead, you know? So that's obviously a benefit to them. And this is why I mention, when patients will self-medicate like this, and they will always do this, I don't think this is going to be stopped by warnings of how dangerous this might be. And in my previous video, for example, I mentioned how, in what circumstances could ivermectin be dangerous, how you could overdose on that as well, whilst it is known to be extremely safe drug. So there are always potential risks, especially when you use veterinary grade medication. Nevertheless, if patients come to you, a doctor, and they tell you, hey, and their cancer is gone miraculously, and they tell you, hey, this is what I did, I think all doctors should be publishing these case studies, because this is how eventually, if you have enough case studies, you're going to have enough push that we're going to get clinical trials. And that's exactly what we need. We absolutely need clinical trials in order to solve this and figure out what does fenbendazole do. Now, speaking of which, let me tell you what fenbendazole is expected to do or suspected to when it comes to cancer. So there's several mechanisms that are potentially attributed to why fenbendazole might be working in terms of fighting cancer. It's still up for a debate, I suppose. We need more information. But number one is that it might interfere with proper function of microtubules. Now, microtubules, think of it, are like bones inside your cell. So they form like a skeleton inside your cell, okay? And they can interfere with their development, and therefore it can force the cell to commit suicide. Now, speaking of microtubules, I recently met with this professor who published an article suggesting that microtubules might also be involved in your consciousness. So stay tuned for that, because I really want to, I'm gonna make a video on this because it's a fascinating topic. So that's number one. Another one is that it might be forcing mitochondria dysfunction to a point where it would force cells to commit suicide as well. So via apoptosis, it might also help achieve that via promoting the function of p53 tumor suppressor protein. It is also suspected that it might inhibit angiogenesis. Now, angiogenesis is a word for development of new blood vessels, so it might inhibit development of new blood vessels in a tumor tissue. It is also suspected to interfere with cancer cells' ability to use glucose and glutamine as for energy source. So that's a big one. Again, check out those early videos I did on cancer metabolism, where I explained this in some detail. And finally, it is also suspected that it might be interfering with cancer stem cells. And of course, my ears perk up when I hear this, because remember, oftentimes people are treated successfully for cancer, but then cancer comes back. And why is that? And this could be because of the fact that some of the cancer stem cells are not fully killed, and cancer can come back. So these are some of the attributed benefits to fenbendazole. But personally, I really hope that we get these clinical trials. And I know a lot of you say that, hey, this will never happen because Big Pharma will not allow it. Well, this is what I think is going to happen. And I think we're one way or another, we probably will eventually show that if this works, that it actually works effectively as a combination of therapy. So fenbendazole, which is very cheap, because it's supposed to be very cheap. So yeah, I bet you Big Pharma wish you could be selling it as some sort of an onco pill and for $20,000 a pop. But if it works with combination therapy that is expensive, then everyone is a winner. So this is how I truly hope it will work, that it's not a standalone drug, but it works great with some other expensive anti-cancer medications, so that this does not have to be stifled because somebody who is supposed to be making money is not making money, so that everyone is happy. The stakeholders that are involved can still make their money, and cancer patients can be surviving. And yeah, listen, we need to know this, because they're telling us that ivermectin is a paste for horses. They're telling us that fenbendazole is a medication for dogs, and yet there's these persistent rumors that they work against cancer. And if this continues with a proper investigations, then soon people will be looking for a cancer cure in hamster food pellets, right? So we need to figure this out. And I think this particular group of individuals who published this did exactly the smart way to do this. We need to get more and more cases published like this to be able to eventually trigger triggered that push towards clinical trials. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up here. That's all I have for you. Before I go, I'm just going to ask you, please press that like button if you like this content. Please subscribe if you want more content like this. I do a lot of different content. Cancer is just one area where I'm obviously focused on right now. And also check out my Patreon account, where my supporting patrons get to vote as to what content ends up being on YouTube, and they also have other perks. But you do not have to be supporting patron in order to sign up. There's also some free content there as well. All my blog articles come out on Patreon account as well, and including I have an blog article on Fenbendazole as well. So I hope you check that out, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye everyone.